Now at 4, after 4 days of speeches and nominations, the Democratic National Convention has wrapped up in Chicago. Democratic Presidential Candidate Kamala Harris accepting the party's nomination last night right there. Here to talk about the convention with us today is Dr. Adam Myers. He's an associate professor of political science at Providence College. So, Dr. Myers, thank you for being here with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Now, of course, these conventions are supposed to, rally support among the party, but they're also trying to grab support from people who are perhaps undecided. Do you think that the DNC accomplished that?
To the extent it could, I think that it did. Clearly, the convention had the effect of ginning up enthusiasm among the Democratic base. Right? Democratic voters are a lot more enthusiastic than they were certainly several weeks ago, before President Biden dropped out. But in terms of appealing to undecided voters, potentially, the party definitely made a strong effort to portray itself as a big tent, the kind of party that for which many different groups in American society have a home. And time will tell just how successful that strategy was.
And there were lots of protests outside of the convention. I mean, we do see this at every convention, but there were also the Gaza war opponents were denied a speaking spot, and a lot of the protesters were speaking about that and were upset about that. Do you think that will hurt the Democrats at all?
It seems to me that in the lead up to the convention, there was a lot of fear that things would get out of control with regards to the protesters, but for the most part, things were pretty calm, and the Democrats handled it fairly well. And it seems like the protesters, they're unhappy probably with the fact that their cause didn't get quite as much play in the convention as they would have wanted. But my sense is that they're a relatively small, and they and their supporters are a relatively small percentage of the American electorate. So at least at this time, I don't see that having a big impact.
So not a make it or break it moment there. Now, there were a ton of celebrities there. Oprah Winfrey, Lil Jon performed, Pink performed. Do celebrity endorsements actually impact undecided voters? I mean, we see celebrities come out every election cycle, but does it really make a difference?
So the research suggests that it does not. But, one thing that I have noticed over the course of these past few years is that increasingly there's like this merging of American politics and pop culture, right? And we saw this at both the Democratic and the Republican conventions, right? In the RNC, we had Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan make appearances, and at the DNC we had all of the stars that you mentioned. And I do wonder if increasingly in the minds of a lot of Americans, politics is just an extension of pop culture, and to the extent that people start seeing politics that way, I guess it's possible that those endorsements could start to make a difference.
Right, interesting, kind of blurring the line there. Now both conventions are wrapped up, so now all eyes are on November. What do both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, have to do? What issues do they have to focus on to gain those undecided voters?
Yeah, so I think Democrats obviously need to keep the momentum going. They have a tremendous amount of momentum and enthusiasm coming out of the convention. The Democratic base is extremely excited, that they have a nominee who's a fresh face, or at least an unfamiliar face, and a vice presidential nominee as well, who's drawing a lot of positive attention. The Republicans and Trump, they have to change the narrative. Right? And I suspect they will. I suspect the tide will turn over the next few weeks. Enthusiasm for Harris will dampen. Trump's attacks will have an impact. There's going to be a shift in the momentum in this race. The debate coming up in a few weeks is going to be very influential. And, I personally hesitate to make predictions these days. I haven't really made predictions since 2016. But the one thing that I would feel comfortable predicting is that the dynamics of this race are going to be quite different, say, in October from what they are now.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that happen before, so no surprise if it happens again. Dr. Meyer, thank you so much for joining us and breaking down the DNC. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.